Evander Holyfield was not just toughness, he was creativity, boxing genius, timing, psychology and pain turned into a system. When you study him, you can see the science of boxing operating inside chaos. He built a matrix where heart met technical intelligence, and every champion had to solve the same problem. So let's start with becoming Cruiserweight Champion. Against Dwight Muhammad Quarry, Evander Holyfield met a tough, intelligent fighter who presented a small target and forced discomfort. 15 rounds showed elite heart, determination and technical maturity. You can see the creativity in his 10-punch combinations, stepping to the right to change the angle, landing beautiful left hooks, especially the double left hooks. In overcoming adversity, Evander truly arrived. Now think of this, pressure reveals the fighter, but adversity reveals the champion. Being undisputed at cruiserweight. So Evander became undisputed champion because he dominated the cruiserweight division with genius and violence. Against Carlos de Leon, he destroyed the final obstacle, landing 20 unanswered punches in round 8. At cruiserweight, no one could compete with him, but the money, the cultural impact, and the historical door was at heavyweight. Considering the stakes on the table, the transition made sense. Think of this, when greatness has conquered one room, ambition must open the door. So let's talk about Evander becoming undisputed heavyweight champion. People minimize the Buster Douglas victory, but the objective fact is simple. Douglas beat Mike Tyson. Therefore, to become undisputed heavyweight champion, Holyfield had to beat Douglas. Evander used his feet, the double jab, timing, and controlled the distance. Then he landed one of the best counter right hands in history. That was not luck, that was science. Think of this, history does not care about excuses, it only records who solved the moment. So now let's address Evander Holyfield's identity. Holyfield's identity was built on movement, a good jab, elite conditioning, and a brilliant right-hand counter. George Foreman said he, Evander Holyfield, had one of the best left hooks to the body, and you can see why. He carried 3 defensive languages, the Philly shell, cross arm, and the traditional guard. That versatility created a matrix of answers. His boxing IQ was not decoration, it was survival. Think of this, a complete fighter is not one weapon, he is many solutions. So let's address Evander Holyfield's conditioning. Now Holyfield treated conditioning like it was a science project. His training was not random suffering. It was structure, repetition, strength work, road work, sparring, recovery, and nutrition. He helped open the door to a more scientific approach to boxing training, where athletes thought about performance like engineers. Did he revolutionize boxing training? In many ways, yes. He made the body part of the technical system. Think of this, talent can win rounds, but conditioning can win errors. Now when Evander Holyfield fought George Foreman, this was an underestimated challenge. Foreman was older, considerably older, but power is the last thing to leave a fighter. Every exchange carried danger. Holyfield had to respect the psychology of that power while still winning the fight. He moved, he punched in combinations, and refused to freeze. That was courage with calculation. Foreman made him answer questions about fear and resistance. Evander answered with discipline. Think of this, danger becomes smaller when intelligence refuses to panic. Now that first fight with Ridick Bowe, from my perspective, was absolutely incredible. It was like a Hagler Hearns stretched over 12 rounds. It was brutal, it was technical, it was psychological. Holyfield spent too much time in the pocket, and that gave Bowe the opportunity to show his inside punching power. Bowe was exceptional that night. Evander's heart was unreal, but the strategy was wrong. Sometimes genius loses because pride takes over the game plan. Think of this, bravery without adjustments can become a doorway for defeat. So then came the Bowe rematch, and the rematch had one major variable. Evander was now under the guidance of Emanuel Stewart. That changed the geometry. Holyfield used his feet effectively, or more effectively, found the right-hand counter, and negated Bowe's punching opportunities and introduced punching variation. He did not just fight harder, He fought smarter. That is the science of boxing. The rematch was not revenge through rage. It was revenge through technical correction. Think of this. Redemption is not repeating the battle. It is rewriting the pattern. Of course, we had the Tyson fight. This was not just physical, it was psychological. Tyson had aura, fear, intimidation, and mythology. Evander Holyfield walked through all of it. He controlled distance, stood strong in the pocket, used timing, pushed Tyson back, and made him feel uncomfortable. Round 6 perhaps gave us one of the greatest counter moments in heavyweight history. But the bigger story was this. Evander beat the idea of Tyson before he beat the man. He turned pressure into order. He turned danger into rhythm. He turned chaos into the matrix. This victory was massive because it proved Holyfield was not just a cruiserweight who became a heavyweight champion. He was one of the greatest fighters ever. Think of this. Every man is mortal. Every aura can be broken, and every champion can be beaten. So we have been going on this journey, and now we're going to transition to a talking head video. In this context, we can give more detail, and I can really land that plane. And then you had like the Larry Holmes fight, and this wasn't an entertaining fight, or it wasn't his most entertaining fight, but it was a tactical and challenging fight. Now, Larry Holmes was older, considerably older, and was written off. But Larry Holmes arguably had the best jab in boxing. But additional to that, for this fight, he developed an effective inside game, and he came with experience. So there was a lot of things he came with: a great jab, a new developed inside game, and championship level experience. Now, this was a tactical fight, and Evander Holyfield had to make adjustments. And one of the adjustments he had to make a transition. He went from fighting predominantly in the pocket, from putting his head on the chest and unleashing those left hooks, to then fighting outside of the pocket, turning it into a jabbing contest, because ironically, that's where he had most of his success. And when he would throw the overhand right, he would come either behind a feint or a jab to the body. So this was a technically challenging fight. And on the eye, it may not have looked impressive, but Evander showed that boxing ring IQ. He showed that he could adapt when things got extremely difficult. Because remember, Larry Holmes had a phenomenal jab. When you think of best left hands in boxing, best jabs in boxing, you're thinking Larry Holmes, Vladimir Klitschko, Lennox Lewis, but most people would have Larry Holmes as number one. So to conclude this part, the Larry Holmes fight presented a challenge. You saw Evander Holyfield fighting in the pocket with the head on the chest, but then you saw his effective double jab, and when he got a significant cut, he maintained his composure. So I'm just going to go on a little bit of a rant here. Now, when you think of the Riddick Bowe fight, particularly the first one, it was such an incredible dynamic fight, and the 10th round was absolutely unbelievable. For those that don't know, Evander was deeply, deeply hurt in that fight, deeply hurt in that round, but then he came back later in the round and seemingly hurt Bowe. He showed character, and the irony was that even though Evander lost the fight, he actually got a lot of credit in that fight. But the lesson of that fight, for me, was that if you fight the wrong fight, courage may not be enough. And then we came into the Riddick Bowe rematch, and this introduced Emmanuel Stewart to the heavyweight context because he was Evander Holyfield's new trainer. And Bowe, of course, had Eddie Futch, who was, again, a phenomenal trainer. So these were two phenomenal trainers. And Bowe did some good things in the fight. He had a very fast start in round 1, came out to end the fight. He had some good right-hand counters and some really clever combinations, and he shortened up his punches at time. And he changed the trajectory of the right hand. First he was looping it, and then he straightened it in the mid to the late fight. So he did some good things in the fight. He didn't make loads and loads of mistakes. But Evander Holyfield's balance and his feet, I think, made the difference. The way he got in and got out, that nullified a lot of Bowe's activity. And also the physicality. Evander would push Ridick Bowe back, which was hard because he had a disparity in terms of weight, because Bowe was a big heavyweight. So there was that physicality. And then there was those punch variations from Evander where he would throw like a left hook and then a double right hand, which is a combination I wasn't familiar that he threw before. So Stewart added these little variations, these little nuances that made a difference. And also there was a tactic that Evander used where he would increase the intensity at the end of the round. So there was all these small adjustments. And Evander, or should I say Emmanuel Stewart, didn't change Evander. He just enabled Evander to further heighten his boxing IQ, because Evander came to Stewart with a high boxing IQ and he just refined it with his particular system. And those two fights, they really were incredible fights, and Evander Holyfield got a lot of respect from both of those fights. So to conclude the Riddick Bowe situation, the footwork in the rematch was the main adjustment, and Evander Holyfield brought extra strength to the table. Evander fought in the pocket, but he spent less time in the pocket. This was intelligent boxing mixed with brutality. And of course, there was the Mike Tyson fight that we discussed. But let me just give a little bit more detail. When we think of Mike Tyson, we think of the brutal violence. But in truth, the brutal violence is true, but also Mike Tyson was a master of psychology. And he was an absolute master because he intimidated his opponents before they got in the ring. And the truth of the matter is that Tyson was a boxing master. He mastered the psychological elements of boxing and the technical elements as well. He was fast and powerful, very fast and powerful. But Evander Holyfield went into that fight with absolutely no fear. That in itself gave him an advantage because everyone else seemed to be scared. So Holyfield went into that fight. He took the center ring. Remember, he was overwhelmingly the underdog. He pushed Tyson back. He used the counter right hand effectively. He used the jab. He used combinations. And in round 6, you could argue, or you could ask the question, was that the greatest counter left hook in history? Because that left hook was brilliant. He caught Tyson's left, delivered a left hook to the chest, and Tyson was on the floor. It was an epic moment. And there was just so much ring intelligence in that performance. I remember, I think it might have been round 6, where Evander threw a 4-punch combination and then he caught a left hand and then threw a left hand counter. There was so much precision and it was just an educated performance. When you look at that performance, you can look at the courage, you can look at the bravery, you can look at the brutality, but don't forget the ring IQ. Evander Holyfield put on an absolute masterclass in every single context. And it was a phenomenal victory. Also, we have to remember, because people love to minimize people's victories and they say that, well, Mike Tyson was past his prime. But this is the objective reality. At the time, Evander Holyfield was seen as the older fighter. He was the one that was seen that was past his prime. And that's why Mike Tyson was an overwhelming favorite. And that's why Mike Tyson himself gives credit for Evander Holyfield being a great, great fighter. And they're both great fighters. With regards to Mike Tyson, this was the ultimate test. Against the baddest man on the planet, Evander showed masterful inside fighting, masterful psychology, masterful counterpunching, and masterful boxing IQ. There were so many elements to this great performance. And I just wanted to address one moment in the George Foreman fight. Now, to give some context, George Foreman is arguably the hardest puncher of all time. Now, some contend with this and say it's only shavers, but regardless, George Foreman hits very, very hard. And in round 2, he hit Evander so hard that according to Evander Holyfield, he thought his teeth fell out and he thought his corner were lying when they said that he was okay. I actually rewatched round 2 and Evander was so stoic in the corner and you wouldn't know that he was experiencing so much pain. And to me, that captures that Evander Holyfield was a warrior, a true warrior. He never gave up. He had Rocky Marciano levels of bravery. But also, he was an underrated technical boxer, a great counterpuncher, a great inside fighter, a great double jab. He had great footwork. Evander was elite, but I think the fans resonated with his bravery, and he was the real deal. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. That means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, all you have to do is simply like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.